Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Dread Time Stories. I'm your host, Dr. Phobia. And tonight, dear patients, this video is going to be a little different. It's one that I've wanted to do for a while, so hopefully you guys will enjoy it just as much as I do. The series I'd like to start is called Creepy Detective. Basically, the plan is I'm going to read you 3 stories. One of them is going to be a personal horror story, whether it's mine, a friend, a family's, etc. The next will be a subscriber story sent by one of the lovely people in the community. Last, but certainly not least, is a story that I have made up completely, and it is up to you, dear patients, to figure out which one of these 3 stories falls into the correct category. Now, if you can do me a favor, please, if you enjoy this type of setup, leave a like. If this video gets 30 likes, then I will continue to do these, because that lets me know the community is interested. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's tale, Creepy Detective, Volume 1. This story happened to me about 6 months ago. I had come home from work, been kind of lazy afterwards, and not really made anything for dinner. Just took one of the best naps I've ever taken in my life. That lasted roughly about 3 hours. So, about 8 o'clock at night, I wasn't tired, and I was super hungry. So, I decided to jump in my truck and take a short drive to the next town up to go to one of my favorite fast food joints, Dairy Queen. Because who doesn't love a chicken strips basket, am I right? Anyway, on my drive, at one point I was driving down one of the rural roads that connected me to where I needed to go, when headlights suddenly appeared in my rear view. Now keep in mind, this is a flat stretch of road. It's a passing zone the entire way through, so if someone wants to go faster than you, then by all means, just pass when it's clear and move out your way. Now, something else I should mention about myself is I'm not a slow driver. I usually go anywhere between 5 to 7 over the speed limit if traffic and weather permits. So when somebody's all over my backside, it really upsets me. So finally, after about 5 to 10 minutes of them just behind me being obnoxious, I decided I was going to speed up. So I put the hammer down on my truck and accelerated up to 70, and they tried to give chase, but I don't believe their car would allow them to do so. At one point, I knew my turn was coming up, so I grabbed a hold of the shifter, downshifted a few times instead of putting on my brake lights, and turned the corner. And when I did, I saw the headlights pass, until I had to apply my own brake lights to prevent ending the life of a raccoon. That's when I saw the taillights come on of the other vehicle, and then the headlights turn around. They were definitely following me. So, I lather rinse repeated on this new road, just hammered all the way down until I got into town, with them not too far behind. Instead of making a right to go to the Dairy Queen, I made an immediate left and turned into the parking lot of the fire station. As soon as I did this, the car that was behind me, which was a very beat-up old Ford Taurus, just squealed tires and continued its way through town. At that point, I was no longer hungry, so I pulled out of the fire station parking lot, drove through downtown, got on the freeway, and headed home. It wasn't until the next morning that the reality of the situation really hit me, when a news story popped up on the screen. A cop in that same little town that I had just been in with the Dairy Queen pulled over the same Ford Taurus with 3 black men in the car. The officer noted that none of them actually spoke English, and when he asked for proof of their identification, one of the men in the back seat pulled a 9mm handgun and shot him in the stomach. The car then peeled out into the night. Thankfully, a woman in the store that had just closed up got the license plate of the Taurus, and the men were caught. Turns out all three of them were illegally here from Sierra Leone. What in the world 3 men from Sierra Leone were doing in the Midwestern United States in a town with a population of less than 2,000, I'll never know. Oh, and in case you're wondering, the officer, he's just fine. He's been back to work now for a few months. So I live alone in a decent neighborhood. Been here for about 5 years, and this story actually just happened last week. I was laying in bed when I started hearing rustling sounds on my roof. I thought at first it was squirrels, but the more I listened, the more it sounded too heavy to be a squirrel. So after a few minutes of it going all over my roof, I went outside, armed with a ball bat and a flashlight, to go check out what it was. I climbed up on this old antenna that was in my backyard that was actually slightly taller than my roof. And upon climbing up, I was shocked to see a guy just chilling on my roof. He was dressed in dirty, nasty clothes, and he had long hair that was missing chunks, and what was remaining was well past his shoulders and looked like it hadn't been shampooed in months, maybe even years. He was just crawling around mumbling to himself. And then, as soon as the beam of my flashlight made contact with him, he turned around, revealing gaunt, pale, track mark infested face. He then started crawling at me extremely quickly. I was down that antenna in a matter of seconds and slamming the back door closed. He just casually jumped down off my roof and turned around and looked in my back door. Then he just charged at it, started banging his fist into it and screaming. He wasn't screaming any words. He was just screaming at the top of his lungs and just kept staring at me the whole time, just banging on the glass over and over again until for some reason I got angry and I raised my ball bat and pointed it at him. He looked confused for a second until I smacked it into my other hand like I was going to hit him with it. He then threw his hands up like he was surrendering and started to back up really slowly away from the door. He actually tripped over this little fountain I have in my backyard, and as soon as he did, he screamed again and ran off into the night. I never saw that man again, and I called the police right after he left. They searched the area, and the only thing they found was a syringe on my roof. I hope to God that is the first and only encounter I ever have with a tweaker. This story isn't really scary as much as it is more of a gross out. But EMT here responded to a guy saying that he had been throwing up for hours. We arrived on the scene and walked into the house where there was in fact a man in his bathroom throwing up. But what was so disgusting is what was in the throw up. By the way, he hadn't flushed any of it. It was all still just building up in the toilet. It was a mix of stomach bile, which, for the record, is a coffee color, and maggots. This dude literally kept throwing up maggots. My partner and I were just shocked by this. So we figured out a way to get him on a stretcher and get him a bag to continue to throw up in. And we got him to the hospital. Come to find out, this guy had a very strange diet. This dude was a hunter and had killed a deer last year and started to let it rot. Then, once it had started rotting, he began to eat it. He said this helped with digestion, or at least that's what a medicine man once told him. The maggots were somehow still alive inside his stomach, And only after he started eating so much of the meat did his body begin to reject it. God only knows how long this has actually been going on. And I truly hope that that guy stops eating that deer. Well, dear patients, it's time for you to put on your detective hats and figure out which one of these stories is a personal one from the subscriber community, and one that comes from the dark, twisted recesses of the mind of Dr. Phobia. So, like I always say in closing, check under your bed, look in your closet, and sleep with the light on. The life you save may very well be your own. Good night, everyone.